Hello and welcome to my book talk. This is Heidi Mori talking because my book is Because Internet: Understanding the New Rules of Language by Gretchen McCulloch. I chose this book because I am interested in how the internet has changed the way we communicate and how those changes affect the classroom. Here's a quote from the jacket. It's the perfect book for understanding how the internet is changing the English language, why it's a good thing, and what our online interactions reveal about who we are. From the author, this was a notable quote as well. We as humans are still practically incapable of doing things without patterns. My mission with this book is to map out what some of those patterns are, to examine why they fall into patterns that they do, and to give you the tools to look at internet language and other cutting edge linguistic innovation through the lens of a pattern seeker. I would highly encourage you to read this book. I think it is good to have an overall understanding of how language has evolved since the internet came on the scene and since um, the majority of people now use the internet. Let's see what some snapshots are from the book, some takeaways. One thing that the author describes is internet people. She talks about three waves of people that came onto the internet. There was the first wave, and she calls them old internet people. They are the founding population. They remember they remember the days when we had multiple nets and used the term World Wide Web. They were ahead of their time, excited about the possibilities of technology, and highly motivated to learn how to use it. Then the second wave came on the scene, and she calls them, there are two types of people, either full internet people or semi-internet people. She describes the full internet people as entering the scene in the late 1990s and early 2000s, ready to embrace the internet for social interactions, where semi-internet people came on the scene at the same time as full internet people and retained a cautious attitude towards getting to know people online. Then we have our third wave of internet people. There were pre-internet people and post-internet people. Pre-internet people were around for the early phases of the internet, but figured they could get by without it. Then in the 2010s, they gradually found their way online. Post-internet people were born into a world with the internet and don't remember the first time they used a computer or did something online. They are socially influenced by the internet regardless of their own level of use. I would consider myself somewhere between a full and internet and semi-internet person. Mostly a semi-internet person, as I was fairly cautious when the internet was first available, even through email. A funny story, I remember sending emails and then calling the person to whom I sent the email just to make sure they got the email. So how things have changed. And my children would definitely be, and students are post-internet people. They really don't remember a time when they didn't have the internet nor didn't have some type of computer or screen or device. And my parents are in the pre-internet group, and they came onto the scene when we pressured them to get Facebook so we could communicate with them more frequently with pictures and so forth. And so now let's move on. Informal writing versus formal writing. Though she emphasizes and discusses mostly informal writing, she just reminds us that formal writing has not disappeared online, and there are still plenty of sites where the kind of writing that was only reserved for print is still used. But informal writing has been very helpful for researchers because it exists as a sea of unfiltered, unedited words that might have only been spoken. So she addresses the following questions throughout her book. Why did emoji become so popular so quickly? And what's the deal with how people of different ages punctuate their emails and text messages so differently? And why does the language in memes often look so wonderfully strange? And she talks about full internet people using informal writing to convey the regular dramas of human life. And they started They also started reshaping informal writing into something that could more deeply convey the full range of human emotions. And with that, we lead into typographical tone of voice. This chapter addresses the use of punctuation, capitalization, and emoticons to express a range of emotions and intended voice inflections. Here are some examples. We use all caps when we want to express shouting or very strong feelings about something. Using lowercase for aesthetic reasons, using ... as a pause in thoughts, using exclamation point to express happiness or a positive tone, using a period to express more serious matters. As you can see, reading this quote over here, internet writing uses subtle punctuation choices to convey sarcasm and other tone of voice nuances. It is not lazy. In fact, she talks a lot about the creativity of internet writing and how it is not taking away from formal writing, but more like adding to our relational experiences. Emoji and other internet gestures. The author brings to light that emoji are like gestures when speaking. She describes two types of emoji gestures. One she calls an emblem gesture. She describes the emblem gesture as emoji that have common names in English: thumbs up, crossed fingers, rolling eyes, and winking. She says that they fit easily into a linguistic frame, and she even discusses the fact that those are words that can be looked up, can be found in the dictionary. Where the other type of gesturing she labels as illustrative gesture, like the laughing face with tears, kissing face, etc. And they express the writer's thoughts and are not as easily described in English. If you've ever asked Siri or Alexa to read your text back to you, you may have had the experience of how they describe the emoji that we've used or that the friend has used in communicating. And then she also mentions the use of emoji in combination with other emoji to express thoughts, sentences, etc. And you can see a few examples over here of ways that that is used. How conversations change. In this section of the book, she really talks about the history of conversations and how we've changed and evolved. And my biggest takeaway from this chapter was the following quote: "We don't pay much attention to our gestures or tone of voice until we need to manage them electronically. The back and forth of conversation is surprisingly complex when we try to filter it through a different medium." I know that I've learned over the years how to communicate more effectively in email, and as being much more aware of my punctuation, as she talked about in the section on capitalization and punctuation, where I make sure that I use a certain number of exclamation points to sound happy and positive, and avoid a lot of periods that sometimes seem to refer to a more negative or a more serious tone. And I've also learned this from my children, because they would tell me, "Mom, are you mad?" Because I was writing with a period at the end of a sentence instead of an exclamation point. So I'm sure a lot of us have had these experiences. Moving on. Memes and internet culture. Memes are another form of internet communication. One purpose is and was for group membership, inside jokes, etc. According to McCulloch, the beauty of memes is that they can bring the internet together. The hardship of them is that they draw boundaries around who gets to be an insider and who doesn't. I thought this was an example of that. If you understand that the red dot is a laser light, you will understand the humor behind this meme. And if you've ever played with a cat with a laser light, you will understand the humor behind this meme. Internet culture. She also describes internet culture as it's not being a single culture, that it contains parts that are widely shared, and it also contains niches, and that it is in flux. As internet becomes just part of our everyday life, It is no longer a separate part of our life. It is something that we weave into our lives. Some areas of future research that she brought up were more internet representation of the more than 7,000 languages spoken in the world. English is currently the most dominant language in internet use, and she would like to see more studies done on how to include other languages, therefore include more people. She also talked about technological changes and things that we will be, different devices we might be using and how that may change our language, and also future changes in English. One thought that came to mind as I was reading this book was how to apply it to the classroom. And I feel like one way that we could do that would be through formal versus informal writing and really helping our students be able to transfer their casual language into more formal language. Because they're using informal writing on a constant basis with their messaging and their online presence, it becomes more difficult to write in a formal way because they're naturally going to write as if they're speaking. And so I think that could be a way that we could help our students improve on their English writing skills. And I also feel that we can learn a lot from our students. Being from an older generation, I know that I have learned a lot from how younger people communicate and what things they see as important and how they use the internet and social media. I can learn a lot from them, and they have a lot of good insights. So we can share our thoughts and what's appropriate and how to be a good online citizen and so forth. But they can also share what they think. And I think that's really important. I would like to close with this quote. I almost forgot. When we thought of language like a book, perhaps it was natural that we were worried and careful about what we enshrined in it. But now we can think of a language like the internet. It's clear that there is space for innovation, space for many Englishes and many other languages besides, space for linguistic playfulness and creativity. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope that you get a chance to read this book. It's very insightful. Have a great day.